to the entertaining Talkin' Sports.
What is going on, football fans? Back at it with another New York Giants video. Hope everybody's staying safe out there, and figured I would try to get a video up kind of getting away from the DeAndre Baker situation. I'm sure I'll be covering that a lot over the course of the next week, but this is a video idea I had for a while. Don't forget, like I said in my previous video, don't think I forgot the video that was suggested by one of my subscribers. I just can't do that video in its entirety until I know all the rookie contracts. But in this video, I'm going to talk about the Jason Garrett signing and the offense that he's going to implement, and which players on the New York Giants offense I think will benefit the most due to it. I'm not going to talk so much about Saquon Barkley, because I think Saquon Barkley would be heavily involved regardless of what offense that you would run. And all you got to do is look at the Dallas Cowboys philosophy. No running back, I'm pretty sure, since Ezekiel Elliott has entered the league, has had more carries. And he's missed some time as well. I think at least 5 or 6 games over the course of his career. And he still has more carries than any other running back since he's been in the league. So the Dallas Cowboys, the New York Giants, rather, taking the Dallas Cowboys philosophy, are going to run the football. But one thing we know about the Jason Garrett-led offense is at least it will be partially based off the Air Coryell offense. Now, of course, Joe Judge came out and said that they're also going to implement some of what he picked up at Alabama while he was there. And to be completely honest with you, I'm not too sure what type of offense they ran while he was coaching there. But as far as Garrett goes, yeah, I mean, they typically look to have tall wide receivers on the outside because they like to throw the ball deep with vertical passing routes, something that the New York Giants did not do a lot of when we look into the numbers. And I'm going to pull up some of the next-gen stats last year that are pretty interesting. Now, of course, for this system to work as well as it needs to work, you need a good offensive line, which is why the Giants went out there and they drafted Andrew Thomas. And they also got Parrott and Lemieux in the 3rd and the 5th, for the simple reason if the wide receivers are running deeper routes, it takes longer to get the playoff. And also, I think you need to be able to run the football to be able to set up the play action to hit the deep balls. The system also calls for a lot of passes to the tight end up the middle of the seam, and that should benefit Evan Ingram. He will be one of the players that I think will greatly benefit from this system if he could remain on the field. Evan Ingram last year was playing very well, and we're going to get into the exact numbers, but he was doing very well before he went down with an injury. Jason Witten, as a matter of fact, from, I think it was I got it right here actually, from 2007 to 2012, Jason Witten had no less than 117 targets, I think it was, over that 6-year span. He was one of the most targeted tight ends, probably was the most targeted tight end over that 6-year stretch. And even last year, Jason Witten had a lot of targets for a guy that was almost 40 years old. So let's jump into the video. Let's talk about some of the next-gen stats I wanted to pull up for you guys, kind of comparing it between Daniel Jones and Dak Prescott. Of course, Prescott played for the Dallas Cowboys last year. Jason, they said they're going to run a similar offense to what the Dallas Cowboys did. And the first thing I'm going to look at in the next-gen stats is time to throw. This is an interesting stat because it measures the amount of time on average that the quarterback has to throw every time he drops back to pass the football. And obviously, the better offensive line, the more time you're going to have to throw. What's ironic here is Sam Darnold actually ranked 3rd, and the New York Jets have a pretty bad offensive line, or at least they did last year. Now, of course, mobility will help you in as well. A guy like Lamar Jackson who could extend plays, Aaron Rodgers, Dak Prescott, those guys could extend plays. Even Daniel Jones could extend plays. Dak Prescott in the time to throw, which is what this system is going to call for. You're going to need time to throw the football. Ranked 6th in the league. He was tied with Aaron Rodgers at 2.88 seconds per dropback. As far as Daniel Jones goes, it wasn't that bad. And like I said, maybe some of it had to do with mobility, but Daniel Jones ranked at 2.84, which was a little bit behind Dak Prescott. So hopefully the New York Giants, with the additions to the offensive line, will give Daniel Jones the time necessary to make the throws down the field. This is an interesting stat here. Average completed air yards, meaning, basically what it is, it's not run after catch. It's where they catch the ball. And Dak Prescott ranked 3rd in the league in terms of average completed air yards. On a typical throw of his that was completed, it was caught 7.6 yards down the field. He was only behind Matthew Stafford and Jameis Winston. Daniel Jones in this aspect, if you look, you got to scroll all the way down ranked all the way down at 5.7 yards. That's a 2-yard difference. That's a huge difference in offensive philosophies. Of course, Pat Shurmur had the West Coast style offense, which calls for a lot of horizontal passing routes. I talk about it all the time, which is more beneficial to wide receivers like Golden Tate and Sterling Shepard. This system, I think, would be a lot more beneficial to the guy I'm going to talk about at the beginning, and that being Darius Slayton, but I'll talk further on that. The average intended air yards, of course, it's going to be pretty similar. Dak Prescott ranks 6th in this aspect with 9.3 intended air yards. Now, exactly how they measure that, I'm not 100% sure, but he was way up there. Daniel Jones, by comparison, you got to, again, scroll all the way down to here. He was 8.1. So not as low in terms of intended air yards. But there you have it. Dak Prescott ranked 6th in intended air yards, 3rd in air yards that were caught in terms of receptions completed, and 6th in time to throw on average with 2.88 seconds. So what that leads you to believe is they're going to be throwing the football down the field at a more advanced pace than they did last year, the New York Giants. Now, the first guy that's going to benefit, to me, is pretty obvious, and that's Darius Slayton. And we're going to go back and look at his college numbers. But last year, the Dallas Cowboys had 3 wide receivers in the top 20 in yards per catch. And we're going to pull up those numbers right now. If you look there, Michael Gallup was 7th in the league at 16.8. And at 18 and 19, you had Randall Cobb, which surprised me. He's more of a slot guy at 15.1, and Amari Cooper at 15.1, which lends itself to Dak Prescott's numbers. Dak Prescott completed the 3rd most air yards in the NFL. So only makes sense. They threw the ball further down the field. Matt Stafford was number 1 on that list, to no surprise. Kenny Golladay is number 3. So expect Darius Slayton, if you go back and look at his college numbers, and by the way, he still ranks, even with the offensive philosophy the Giants had last year, still ranked 17th in the league last year. If you look there, that's Darius Slayton. He had 740 yards on just 48 receptions, averaging 15.4 yards a reception. Well, with this, with this new offense where they're going to be throwing the ball down the field more, you would think it would lend itself to Darius Slayton, who is by far the best vertical threat on this team. If you go back and look at his college numbers, Darius Slayton, in terms of average yards per reception for his career at Auburn, ranked in at 20.3. 19.5 in his freshman year, 22.2 in his sophomore, and 19.1 in his junior. He didn't have a lot of catches. He only had 79 career catches, but he had 1,605 yards and 11 touchdowns. He was a vertical threat, and he seems to be the perfect type of wide receiver for this offensive philosophy that I think the New York Giants are going to be running with Jason Garrett. It's why I've been on record as saying I think he's going to have a strong year for the New York Giants, especially after seeing that they didn't spend any draft capital at the wide receiver position. The next guy we're going to talk about is Evan Ingram. And like I said earlier, Jason Witten from 2007 to 2012 had no less than 117 targets. I think he was over 135 3 of those years. Evan Ingram last year, before the injury, and a lot of people forget this, had some of the most targets in the league. He had 68 targets in just 8 games, 6 starts. And we're going to get into where he would have ranked if you duplicate that. But if he were to average the same amount over the second 8 games, he would have had 136 targets. And in this offense, he should only be targeted more. Now, of course, there were some injuries and some suspensions early on. Golden Tate, for example, was suspended the first 4 games. Shepard probably missed a couple of games that Ingram played as well due to concussion. So that might have been, part of the reason for an increase in targets. But still, regardless, Daniel Jones and Evan Ingram showed chemistry. And knowing this offense historically revolves around the tight end. You go back, Kellen Winslow really was the first, big-time pass-catching tight end in NFL history, or one of anyway. He was their best receiver. He made that system go. Jason Witten, of course, with the Dallas Cowboys has been great. I think Evan Ingram, if he could stay on the field, could be in for a mega year for the New York Giants. Like I said, if you prorate that over a 16-game stretch, had he not gotten hurt, he would have had 136 targets. If that were the case, he would have had as many targets as Travis Kelce last year, who ranked in an 11th overall and first at the tight end position. So I expect Evan Ingram in this new offense to be targeted early and often by the New York Giants. And I think him and Slayton will benefit more so than any other wide receiver for the New York Giants. Like I said, in terms of Barkley, I think he's going to benefit no matter what. I think they're going to fit the offense around his skill set. Now, the one guy, and maybe you could probably even include Sterling Shepard in this, but the one guy that I'm going to point out that I think will suffer is Golden Tate. Golden Tate, of course, is a slot wide receiver, and the reason the New York Giants brought him in my opinion, was due in large part, well, one, you had a rookie quarterback and you wanted a wide receiver with experience. We didn't know what we had in Darius Slayton. But two, he was a guy that fit Pat Shurmur's offensive philosophy. He does not fit, in my opinion at least, Jason Garrett's offensive philosophy. Now, I'm not telling you that Golden Tate's going to be, not used at all, but I think he'll be used less than he has in the past. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up some of the things that Cole Beasley had to say about his time with the Dallas Cowboys in this offense. And he complained about not getting enough targets. It's why he plays now for the Buffalo Bills. I don't think he had over 100 targets in any year with the Dallas Cowboys over the last 2 or 3 years in this offense. This is what Beasley had to say, and obviously they're comparable players. They're both slot wide receivers. I don't need the ball all the time. Just more than 3 targets a game. Is 5 to 8 targets a game at least too much to ask? Then he later went on to say, utilization is more important than money, Beasley said, responding to a follower who wanted the best of both worlds for the longtime Cowboys pass catcher in free agency. So I like Golden Tate. I think he's a good slot wide receiver, but I don't expect them to use him nearly as often as they did last year. I think they're going to spread the ball around, but I think they're going to take their deep shots on guys like Darius Slayton. Now, Golden Tate may not get as many targets, but if you saw it with Randall Cobb last year, who's thought to be more of a slot wide receiver, Randall Cobb still had over 800 yards, even though he didn't get pelleted with targets because he averaged over 15 yards of reception. So it is possible that Golden Tate could still have a decent amount of yards, just not nearly the amount of receptions he typically has in this offense. He might be asked to do, deeper routes up the seam for the New York Giants. But the two guys who I think will benefit more so than anybody else in the passing game this year for the New York Giants is Evan Ingram and Darius Slayton, for the reasons that I stated. As always, guys, if you liked what you watched, please subscribe, drop a comment, maybe give me a little thumbs up. Cheers.